Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten and Adam Nathan here today. Last time we did a stream together, Adam, I was told off by someone in the comments for not giving you a proper introduction.
So I don't think I'm worth that.
How would you like to be introduced?
I think I responded saying that I'm just a bang average fan who's happy to be on the stream. So I'm more than happy with that, to be honest. That suits me.
Legend Adam Nathan is with us here today
I think we can rein that in.
To talk through the Seahawks. So I've got a few topics I want to get into, Adam, and again, feel free to bounce off these. But I do think that this is pretty much the best time for me anyway, as an NFL fan for a long time. Because once the draft's done, it's just that's it until, well, training camp. And you've got 2 weeks now to sort of probably overanalyze everything. I think about a week ago, I felt like I was burnt out. Like I'd kind of like, can the draft happen now? But now I'm sort of thinking I'm going to savor the next 14 days because in 14 days and a few hours' time, we'll know who the Seahawks have taken with their first pick. So let me just sort of ask you this now. What are you thinking with 2 weeks to go? You know, what would constitute, if you know, what would make you happy at the end of the third day of the draft as a Seahawks fan?
I would like to come on here and hear you say that they have picked up two guys that you can see being real anchors in the interior of the offensive line. I would put that as my baseline. And I'm trying to think, you know, if you said to me that they've got one or maybe none, but they've got this unbelievable receiver, they've got an amazing defensive end, they've picked up another safety who can help with nickel packages, for example. I don't know if that would be enough for me. If I feel like the foundations of my draft house that I'm building are two guys in the interior offensive line. And I don't know yet if I would be satisfied with terrific walls and ceilings if I haven't got those foundations in place. So I think, as basic as it is, and I know that's probably a bit of a generic Seahawk fan kind of view that it's, you know, offensive line or bust. And I know that deep down there needs to be more context and texture to a draft than that. But right now, that's where I am, I think.
I think they have to feel as if they're going to get those two offensive linemen because there's just nothing left. And I think part of the reason for being so patient and I think sensible in free agency was just a firm belief that there would be options in the draft. And they have, and we're going to talk a bit about this today, they have ways and means of making this happen for them. They can trade down, they can trade up, they can get into the ranges where they want to be able to take these players. So they do have to come away with two. And I think it is two. I think it either has to be a couple of guards or a guard and a center at least. And I know that Christian Haynes is still there. I'm still not totally convinced that you can just assume that he's going to work out at this point. I think they probably need a couple. And they can do it in various different ways. For me, Adam, you know, if they did go out and draft Gray Zabel in round one, I just get the sense that his sort of luster is lessening slightly. When you look at the mock drafts, he was kind of going up, and now he's going down, down, down again. So maybe the intel from the league is matching what I was hearing a couple of weeks ago, which is that generally speaking, people don't see him as a first round pick or a good use of a first round pick. But if they took him at 18 and then they went and got Tate Ratledge at 50 or 52, and you had two big athletic physical guards, yeah, I would be completely ecstatic with that. But equally, if they take a different player at 18 and a different player at 50, but then do take an offensive lineman at 52, or if they think the better options are after that, I'll sort of judge it when it's happened. I mean, what they absolutely cannot do, though, is come out of this draft with no options. I mean, and I think you can always tell a little bit. They do tip the hat a little bit as to what they haven't done up until this point. They've done nothing at guard. There is a huge gaping hole at left guard. They have to draft a left guard. So I would suggest that is more likely to be somebody who's actually played guard or even left guard who is going to come in and play that role. They have not replaced Jonathan Hankins, the nose tackle. So there is a chance they are going to draft a nose tackle at some point. They've not replaced Roy Robertson Harris. So a 290-ish pounds defensive lineman is plausibly going to be drafted at some point. And at safety, they haven't replaced Rayshawn Jenkins. So you would imagine that a safety is going to be drafted at some point. And then there are other positions, wide receiver, tight end. There may be others that I'm missing now. Another linebacker for depth, perhaps, that you could see coming into there. But what they haven't done so far, Adam, I would suggest is going to be indicative of what we see. And then it's just the order in which this comes. But it is such a strong defensive line draft that I think they'll feel comfortable getting a nose tackle at some point, getting a Roy Robertson Harrison replacement at some point. For me, the interesting bit is, where are they going to get that safety? Where are they going to get the interior offensive lineman? Are they going to draft a quarterback at some point, which I still think? And with as many picks as they've got, it is going to be interesting. Get your super chats in. I've seen a couple come in already. And if you have questions, happy to answer absolutely any question to do with the draft. So if you stick it in, I'll answer that. If you have a question for both of us, even better, stick it in there. It can be a general Seahawks point, or if you just want to support the channel, send those in. Really appreciate it. By the way, big shout out to the Hawks Nest YouTube channel, because I went on there this week for the first time and did a stream with Brendan. And off the back of that, I added about 120 new subscribers. So I've now looking at 10,000 and thinking, here we go. This could happen. So we've got 2 weeks to get another 900. I think this might be as optimistic as my hair growing back, but at the same time, I'm going to punt for it and hope for it that we can get up there. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. The first thing I wanted to talk about, Adam, and I want you to tell me if this is an overreaction or if this is just fair. But I know people kind of love him or hate him, and the people who hate him have their legitimate reasons for that. But I was watching the John Gruden quarterback camp series this week, and he's done an episode with Will Howard and an episode with Riley Leonard so far. And the first one was with Will Howard. I have never seen anything like this from a college quarterback before. Will Howard was unbelievable. It wasn't a performance. It was just the way he handled that show. Said to me, if I need a quarterback, I want someone like that. Because I don't know if you've seen any of these things, Adam. And what Gruden tends to do is he gets them to stand up and he goes, right, if we get a cover 2, I want you to call this. But then if they switch to a cover 3 while you're, in the gun or whatever, I want you to switch to this. And then if you see some opportunity here, I want you to switch to this play. Or if you see a blitz, you need to get out of that play and get into this play. And he just basically throws, and I'm not an X and O's guy. I don't know the jargon, but it'd be like X pitch, fly, Z 48. And he'll just say that I want you to go to that. But then if this happens, I want you to go to 2 flex, system, Barbara, sock. And, and he just sort of read all this stuff out to Will Howard. And then Will Howard just stood up, and it was as if he'd been studying it for 6 months. It just all went in. It all went in. And he could relay most of it back to John Gruden. And Gruden sat there looking at him like he's his long-lost son. Like he's just got a glint in his eye because he just thinks college quarterbacks can't do this. And then I watched the Riley Leonard one last night, and he got Riley Leonard up and said, can you show me your snap count at Notre Dame? And he stood up and he went. And then he sat down again. It was quite funny from Riley Leonard, in fairness. But that's what he had to do, because he does what every college quarterback pretty much does. They get told to play in the ear, and then they just go out and do it. And then if there's an adjustment, the sideline tells you the adjustment. You look to the sideline, Adam, and then you make the adjustment. And Will Howard didn't need that. Will Howard's already operating like an NFL quarterback. It's like he's learned French. He's learned NFL. And this is where so many young college quarterbacks fail, because they come in and they have someone like Gruden telling them all this stuff, and they drown. I can remember starting a new job once, and having come from a radio background, it was a TV background, and the person was telling me all of the stuff I needed to know about TV. And after the first day, I got in my car and I was knackered because I just thought, I can't deal with it. I don't understand any of this stuff. I'm going to fail. I don't know this. This is not me. And I was drained. 2 weeks later, I got it all nailed down. And I was thinking, wow, what a stupid reaction that was after the first day. But this is so hard to learn. And the quarterbacks that come into the league and can't pick this up often fail because their teammates, and there's 90 of them initially in camp, look at them and go, you can't do this. And then they come in the next day and they fail again and they go, this guy sucks. This guy's not the answer. He's a first-round pick. Who is this guy? He can't run this team. You need somebody who's going to come in there and everybody immediately goes, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. I mean, he was on this video clip, and I don't want to exaggerate here. He was marching around like bloody Peyton Manning in that room in front of Gruden. And then you combine all of that, the processing and that, I don't know if we call it a photographic memory because he's just relaying stuff, but he's very intelligent, obviously. He's big, he's athletic, he's good under pressure, he won the Big 12 and a national championship with 2 different teams. If I didn't have a good starting quarterback, and I'm looking at the Steelers right now, or the Jets, or the Browns, I might use my first pick on this guy because he can come in and play. And he might not, who knows, maybe he just won't be very good at him at the next level when the game's quickened up. But I was so impressed with this guy. Is it an overreaction to this? Or do you get, I mean, I just thought it was unbelievable watching Will Howard in that video.
I've always gone down the sort of old football view that like winners win, and I don't think you can teach winning inherently. And I kind of feel that across the majority of sports. You know, watching a team that never wins perennially as my main sporting occupation, I know what not winning looks like, and you can see the traits. And I do put quite a lot of stock in the fact that he has won, and he did win the national championship, and sort of was basically perfect in doing it. And people get very, very caught up at QB wins and the idea that a quarterback, the Eli Manning stuff with the Hall of Fame. Like, I put stock in that because I think if you've ultimately your most important thing you do is when we get to the moment, can you execute? And knowing that you've got a guy that can do that, I do put a lot of stock in that. I wasn't expecting you to say first round pick because there doesn't appear to have been the buzz up to then. I'm not saying you're overreacting, but I was going to come on and say, well, yeah, like with a second and third round pick, you're ultimately, these are lottery tickets. Who really cares? And if you think there's a guy that can do that, absolutely. It would be disingenuous for me to say that I've got the knowledge to say, yeah, throw a first round pick at this guy. But if you've got the intangibles, if you have one, and if you can do it, which we've all seen, like, why not? Instead of picking up Aaron Rodgers, if you're the Steelers, like, what are you really going to lose in that trade-off for me? So, yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting thought. I mean, yes, I mean, someone like the Browns, for example, if they can get them with maybe their second round pick, pick, what's that, 34, 35, that seems like 33. Quite a sensible 33. That seems like quite a sensible use of a selection. But yeah, I mean, in such a quarterback barren draft, if you've got a guy that appears to have a lot of the intangibles that you want, like, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, just to clarify, because somebody said, "Oh, the Jets and the Browns using a top 10 pick on him." It seems like an overreaction. I'm not suggesting they spend a top 10 pick on it. I misspoke. What I mean is that, I mean, we're going to discuss this a little bit in a second. Todd McShay put out a mock draft today where he had the Browns trading back into the first round. He's talked about the Jets trading back into the first round. He's talked about the Giants trading back into the first round. And I mean, he had the Giants trading up for Jalen Milroe, who can't throw. So for me, if you are going to trade up, I mean, you can have Shador, you can have Jalen Milroe. If you're trading back into the first round, I'm having Will Howard. And as you said, it's a lottery ticket. And there's no guarantee that any of these guys are going to work out. But what I do know is that, yeah, Will Howard's going to spend some time learning the playbook in his first few weeks in the NFL once he's been drafted. But then when he gets to camp, I'm very confident that he'll be very comfortable in his own skin, will understand the offense. And then the improvement side of his game begins day one of training camp. Whereas a lot of these other quarterbacks are going to go into training camp and they're not going to understand half this stuff. They're going to need a whole bunch of time. And it's why players who get drafted early often find the careers are over before they've even really got going, before they've even got the trousers off, because they just can't process. They can't do this. And I spoke to two people, and one of them knows Will Howard and said he is just he's so pro ready. He is by far the most pro ready quarterback in this draft. And the other ones, who is the other person I spoke to, who is not one to say things like this. Like, he is every quarterback sucks in this guy's mindset, really. And he just said he's a good player. You know, not physically amazing, but he's a good football player. And then I was like, what, second round? And he was like, yeah. Maybe someone will trade into the back end of the first for him. And maybe in 2.5 weeks, Adam, we'll be doing a stream or something, or I'll be talking away or something like this. And he'll have gone in round 4. And this will all be bollocks. But I've just got a feeling that maybe while everybody's like falling over themselves at the minute to say, oh, Jalen Milroe is going to go in the first round and all of this, I'd just keep an eye on this guy. And I thought, and if you haven't seen that episode with Will Howard in the Gruden quarterback camp, I'd recommend people going and watching it, because I think you will be impressed.
Yeah, I don't want to be sort of recreating history, but from memory, like when you have a draft like the Malik Willis draft, it felt like as the draft was approaching, people were taking more and more of a step back on the quarterbacks in general. And that as we came around to draft night, there was an acceptance that these guys were not going to go. But this year, it does feel like, as we inch closer, Shedeur Sanders is meeting with them, and maybe Jalen Milroe could be. It feels like the general trend of the quarterback class is moving forward, and that's the kind of thing that makes me feel that maybe Howard does go higher. I mean, the Milroe one is one that I personally don't understand at all, because from an outsider looking in, like, everyone agrees he can't throw. There's no one that says he. So when you've got the Lamar Jackson debate, for example, he should be a wide receiver. You've got enough people that say, no, this guy's obviously a great quarterback. He can throw. He's also amazing with his legs. I've not heard one person talk up Jalen Milroe's ability to throw the ball in a straight line. So for me, that should be an immediate just, no, what are we doing? So for someone like him to be getting the pot that he is versus a Howard who seems to sort of be on the more understated, under the radar side, I find that quite a confusing trend.
I just wonder if there's a bit of shenanigans going on with this Jalen Milroe thing. Whether the league is kind of trying to make it a thing and it's all one great big misdirection. Because he is obviously a great athlete. And I've no doubt there are some teams that will like his character and like his legs and think we can turn him into something with a bit of seasoning. But he just couldn't function. I mean, like at the end of the season for Alabama, it was, I mean, I might as well have gone out there and played, because he was, I mean, that final game, the bowl game, was about as bad as it gets. And, you almost think, well, why are you out here? If that's what you're going to do, you might as well just be sitting at home and waiting for the draft. So it got really bad. And I've just got this feeling, and look, people may be saying, look, I thought this was a Seahawks conversation here. And you're talking about Will Howard to the Jets and the Browns and everybody else except the Seahawks. If he's there in round 2, I would seriously consider it. I would seriously consider it. I think you can't assume that Sam Darnold is the guy, and nobody's going to do that in the building. Sam Darnold's contract, now that Brady Henderson, the great Brady Henderson, has revealed what it actually is, as opposed to what everybody having a big old guess, with maybe articles on, field goals telling people to stop talking about it because it's obviously, been announced now. And then Brady just comes in and clarifies everything. That was an excellent piece of reporting from Brady Henderson. Yeah, I think that it is clear that he is in a prove it situation. It's a prove it year for Sam Darnold. And having somebody else on the roster, because Sam Howell isn't the guy, Having somebody else on the roster pushing, learning, saying, give me a go, might not be the worst thing in the world. And the thing about round 2 versus round 1 is if you draft him in round 1, everybody expects that guy to start 6 weeks in, unless Darnold's like fantastic. Take him in round 2, and then you make it clear he is not starting early. People will live with it. And I like him. I like him. I like the cut of his jib, Adam. I like him. And I think you see enough. I mean, his QBR in the playoffs for Ohio State was, I think, 96.4. That's nearly perfect. It's only out of 100. You can't be any better than that. So I think that's very, very impressive. Very, very impressive. So I'm just a name to keep an eye on. Anyway, the next thing I was going to talk about is Todd McShay brought out his 3rd mock draft today. And Mel Kiper did his final mock draft. I mean, I don't know. There's 2 weeks to go, Mel. Like, you could fit another one in between now and then. But he's brought out his final mock draft as well. And they both have the Seahawks taking Kelvin Banks Jr., who is the left tackle for Texas. So I want to get your thoughts on this, Adam. I'm going to tell you what I think first. I'm not a fan of this because McShay is not a fan of Kelvin Banks Jr. In his last top 100 rankings, he had him, let me just open this up. He had him 25th on his big board. And he says that he has some technical issues that he has to fix to play tackle in the NFL. And yet he has him playing tackle at the next level and says, well, he can learn the technique and potentially replace Abe Lucas one day. But in the meantime, he can just play guard. And I'm just thinking, I don't want the Seahawks to spend a top 20 pick on a potential right tackle replacement for Abe Lucas, who I kind of hope takes the job long term. But even if he doesn't, I don't really feel like the 18th pick needs to be insurance for that. And just on the off chance, in the meantime, let's just put him at guard. I mean, I just think Kelvin Banks Jr. is just a pure right tackle anyway. I don't think he's going to be a particularly good guard. I think he's a right tackle. But I think this idea that, well, you draft him, you play him at guard, and maybe he becomes a right tackle anyway, I'm not really that keen on that, Adam. I'd rather draft a guard. And if that means waiting until round 2, round 3, round 4, give me a guard who's played guard, who's excelled at guard, and has done well at guard. I don't need somebody who's maybe going to kick inside at the 18th pick. I don't mind doing that a little bit later on with a Chase Lunt, a Charles Grant, or somebody like this. Not with the 18th pick, though. I want the player that I draft at 18, I want to be able to go, there's the tape. That's what I'm getting. That's where he's played in college. And we're going to put him in our offense or our defense now. That's what I want with 18.
Yeah, I mean, it was frustrating enough seeing Damian Lewis move from right guard to left guard to accommodate Gabe Jackson from the Raiders a few years ago, and that sort of stunted his career and made him move elsewhere. And I think he probably didn't quite play up to his potential. So the last thing I want to do, if we're going to have to go through all this again next year to get a guard because you've moved Banks to tackle because Lucas isn't here anymore or whatever, if you're going to spend that resource on a pick and a player, that needs to be a 3 or 4 year investment in the player. That feels obvious to me. Like the whole point of doing it is to not have to go through it again. If we have to find a guard next year as well, then I'd rather get someone off, that gets cut in August because you're sort of accepting it's not going to work long term anyway. So I don't understand the reasoning behind that. Now, he maybe not saying that's what the Seahawks should do, and is saying that's what they will do, which is obviously 2 very different discussions. But if they're going to use that pick on 18, you said last time we spoke that you're looking for starters, but I think you're looking for starters that are going to play in the position you get them for, really. Otherwise, you're just kicking the can down the road again, and we've done that for far too long on the offensive line.
And when I watch him, I just don't. There's just something missing, There's just I can't get excited about Kelvin Banks Jr. to Seattle. And, if I needed a right tackle, if that's where the hole was, if the guards and the centers were fine and they just really need a right tackle, I'd be like, yeah, fine. Okay. He looks like a right tackle to me for the NFL. And you get him a bit of protection with the tight end, and maybe he thrives in that position. I just don't watch his tape and get any sense of excitement. And, I had a look at who was available to Seattle at that pick in McShay's mock. So Donovan Ezaraku went 22 to the Chargers. I think he'd be a better option. Michael Williams is coming for an official visit. I don't think the Seahawks are going to draft him, but he was available. Gray Zabel went 25 to the Houston Texans. Jahdae Barron lasted to the Rams at 26. And he likes Jahdae Barron, so he's hearing that he may last, because I think he has him as like the 9th best player in the draft, and he's got him going to 26. So he might be available. I think he would be a good option. Malachi Starks at 29 would be a really good option for them. So there's others that could go there. Mika Ibuka's still available there. So I just didn't like the pick. But at the same time, Adam, that's two people, Mel Kiper and Todd McShay both putting Kelvin Banks Jr. there. And it just makes you think, doesn't it? And in fairness, there are some people who really rate him. In Bob McGinn's series, and people just complain about Bob McGinn's scouting sources and Bob McGinn's views and all of this. He's pretty good at projecting where people are going to go. And he had Kelvin Banks in the same sort of grouping with Will Campbell and Armand Membu. So if he's, viewed as good as that, and you get him at 18, it's not bad value. And Lance Zierlein's got him quite high in his gradings as well. I'm just pulling it up now so I can give you the actual position where he is. So he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14th on Lance Zierlein's board. So you're getting the 14th best player at 18. That's value. But I just, people will like it, Adam, because he has a big OL next to his name. They've drafted a lineman. Amazing. It's fantastic. A+. If that happens on draft day, I'll say, look, fine. Let's give him a go. See what happens. But it will not be a jumping out of the seat celebrating pick for me. It rarely is anyway, but I will certainly won't be jumping out and cracking open a bottle of champagne if that happens.
Is there any thought, and I'm not asking this with any agenda, but Abe Lucas chronic knee issue potentially, would maybe moving him into right guard and having Banks as a tackle be a slightly less onerous position for Lucas to play with his knee injury? Would there be any rationale behind that?
Potentially. I don't know. I asked somebody about this. I think it may have been before the last season, and I think they said, I can't remember what they said, so I'm not going to try and I'll be making something up. I can't remember whether they said it would be even harder because of the you have to use your knees a lot more. You're working in space outside. I can't remember if they said he just wouldn't fit there, but it wasn't the most positive reaction to that question. And I don't know is the answer. I know there's a lot of people who thought Lucas was a guard. I never understood that. I always felt he was a classic right tackle, with his position, his body was perfect for the position. I want to see him stay at right tackle. But that's, I suppose, a point that if his knee is not as good as, everyone assumes, and there's no reason not to assume it's okay. But if it's not that amazing, and if they are sort of viewing it as this is his last season, we are not going to be giving this guy a contract extension, then I suppose, yes, Kelvin Banks at guard for a year, then replacing Abe Lucas at right tackle is a plan. But as you quite rightly mentioned there, that's a plan that requires you to then find another bloody guard in a year's time. So you're back to the same song and dance that we've had this year. And if Todd McShay's right and Kelvin Banks needs work, is he going to be able to? How's he practicing his tackle technique when he's having to learn a new position in camp? That just to me feels complicated. And if you do need a right tackle, by the way, go and take Ozzy Trapillo in round 2 or somebody else in round 3. If that's what you need, then that's what you need. But let's not take someone at 18 for that. It'd be my guess, unless they genuinely believe he can be a brilliant left guard. And if they do, I'm sure that's what we will hear in 2 weeks' time after they've taken him, and we'll be able to reflect on that. And I'll just say it now, Adam, I'm not crazy about the pick. If they make the pick, I'm not gonna shit all over it. I'll say fair enough. Let's see how this goes. I'll give it a shot, but it's just not necessarily the direction that I would go in. Let's go through some super chats before I move on to our next topic. Kevin says, who's a defensive joker MMJS should target? A defensive joker. Some of these terms in football are hilarious, by the way, aren't they? A joker. Like, if you say someone's a joker in our football, it'd be a very different thing.
When I saw that come up, I was like, oh yeah, John Schneider is a complete joker. But then I realized what he was trying to say. So fair play.
So I think Jade Barron could potentially be that. I don't think Malachi Starks is. A lot of people think Malachi Starks is very versatile. I think he's better as a deep safety. But I think Barron could be. Nick Emmanwori can play a couple of positions. I think Billy Bowman can kind of do that role. The Oklahoma defensive back. That might be it. Caleb Branshaw, maybe. Not a ton of options is basically what I'm saying. But
do you think when he says joker, he might mean like a guy you pick up towards the end that can just be like have one or two particular traits that just make them stand out, as opposed to like a Swiss Army knife kind of player?
I think he means sort of the defensive back who can do a bit of everything. But or does he? I don't know actually. I mean, like I said, I'm not an X's and O's guy. Like if you throw football jargon at me, I kind of just start falling asleep. So it's.
You would not do one on the Gruden quarterback camp, Rob. If you wanted to be a quarterback, like, do not go on that camp.
I mean, it is funny because I was thinking that all the way through watching it, was that if this was me, I don't want to do this, John.
I think I'd cry.
John, I don't want to be a quarterback anymore. You've ruined it.
We were so close, but no, not anymore.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe if someone can explain it to me. I don't know. If they mean like a pass rusher, is that what they mean? Do they mean a pass rusher who's like Bruce Irvin? Because then I suppose if it's like that nickel rusher or someone who can play a different position and then reduce down. Someone's put Jahad Campbell in the comments. Yeah, I mean he could do it, but obviously the injuries is an issue there. Who else could do that? I mean, obviously Abdul Carter can. I wonder if Braden Swinson could do that. I wonder if Josiah Stewart could do that. Oladejo could do it because he's played linebacker and rush end. I think Ashton Gillott could do that, quite frankly.
So I reckon the question is sort of a defensive version of Devon A-Chain, if that makes sense. Someone that's got a couple of things that they just do unbelievably well that makes them just like, a guy that you can just plug in just to win you something with traits that he's got that are completely unique. That's how I read the question.
I've just had a look on Google and it says in the NFL, particularly those run by Sean Payton, a joker is a versatile offensive player, typically a tight end or a running back. So there we go. I don't know if a defensive joker exists. I think it's more like a playmaker who's a hybrid on offense. So yeah, I'm glad. That. Apart from that, we've definitely. I think we've
nailed it.
Got that. Yeah, smashed it. Glenn says, "Great stuff as always. Just watch the Gruden Will Howard interview. Fantastic. Any chance?" Says Glenn. Yeah, I think there's a chance. I just think he might go a bit too early for Seattle. I think they would. They're not going to take him at 18, I don't think. And I think there are teams out there that may just think this is our guy. Whether that's Jets, maybe the Raiders take him and stash him. I mean, Geno's contract feels very short term. And then there's other teams who could take him as well. I just wonder if they'll go down that road rather than him lasting to 50. Corey says, Rob, I'm still in on Tyler Booker. We needed his leadership, and the man just knows how to play a game of football. We've had past frustrations that we couldn't move players at the point of attack. So, well, Corey raises an interesting point here, Adam, and I don't disagree with Corey. And thanks for the super chats, guys. I'm going to get through some more, keep them coming in. Tyler Booker is one of my favorite players in the draft because he is what I want in a guard. You know, he's big, physical, helps set the tone. I like linemen to sort of be the identity of the team, and he would produce that. He's a culture setter. But because the Seahawks have gone with a zone blocking scheme, and because he runs a 1-9-0 or a 1-9-2 10-yard split, foot speed is so important for this system, and he doesn't have it. And that automatically feels like it rules him out. Now, I don't know how accurate this is. I'm trying to find the Dame Brugler the beast thing that Dame Brugler does, because he put down that Tyler Booker's short shuttle was like a 4.62 or something like that. I'm just logging onto it now, and that does not sound right. That sounds a little bit typo-y, because I'm looking now. So he's got his short shuttle down as a 4.65. A 4.65 when everything else was terrible just doesn't seem to chime. But then the other weird thing was that he had this horrible testing session at the combine and then went out on the field to do the workout, the drills, and was excellent and moved around very freely. So you could actually convince me that he's capable of a 4.65 short shuttle. So he's got the short shuttle that would go along with, capable of playing in this system, but he doesn't have anything else that goes with it, Adam. So I'm kind of like confused where he goes. And also we've gone from, and this is, sometimes you can have too much information. Just after the combine, Todd McShay, who I really respect and like, did a video saying he's going to go earlier than people think. He's going to go a lot earlier than people think. Like he was even implying that he might go in the top 10. He's sort of suggesting, if not top 10, then the teens. That's where he's going to go. He's not even in his first round mock draft for the last two mock drafts. He's not in Mel Kiper's first round mock draft. But he's never explained, like, is it just the testing? He's never explained why Book. Now, he's doing a full breakdown on Monday on the offensive lineman, and I suspect we will get our answers then. But this guy has gone from, like, could be an option at 18, might not even be there at 18. Now he's not even a first-round pick. Is he a scheme fit? Is he not a scheme fit? When's he going to last? In Mel Kiper's mock, he lasted like 45, 47 or something like that. And I'm thinking, if this guy's there at 40, I'm going to go and get him. Like, look, he might be the perfect zone blocker, but Seahawks couldn't do anything in the red zone last year. And if just put him in there. And Aaron Banks can play for the Niners. And if Aaron Banks can play for the Packers on $19.25 million a year, then I think we can take Tyler Booker in round 2. So I'm with Corey. I like Booker. Part of me wonders, Adam, whether the reason they've not touched a left guard is because they know a player like Tyler Booker will be there waiting for them, or a Donovan Jackson, or somebody like that who has played bloody left guard, who has mastered left guard, who can come in and play week 1 at left guard, and they're just going to take him. And that will be a pick if they take Tyler Booker that will have me jumping out of the sofa or the couch and celebrating, because that's the kind of person I want on this team, Adam. But I just don't know whether the scheme's going to allow it.
I was actually going to ask you that you do so many mock drafts, realistic, who you think they'll take and whatever. And I don't know that we know who you want them to take, particularly. Like if all things are, equal with the general way the mock drafts fall. But that's the most excited I've seen you about an actual player that the Seahawks might pick up. I don't know if that's indicative of anything, but you've always been very, when people said about, oh, you want Quinn Ewers, but you don't. You have your analysis, and you've always been very good to not fuse your analysis with your desire. But that's the first time that I've seen you get particularly excited at the prospect of Seahawks using their high pick on a player.
Well, let me just show you. Right, okay, these are the players I have in the background of my office. So you've got Marshawn Lynch there. You have Devon Witherspoon. Shout out to Tyler Shaw, by the way, who painted that Devon Witherspoon. And he is kindly, I might be replacing the Cam and the Marshawn with two of his other paintings. He's done a Cam and a Marshawn, so I might be replacing them very shortly. But you can kind of get the gist of the players that I like, Adam. I like physical players. I like players who are going to hit you in the face. Because I don't apologize for this. That's what I like about football. It's violent. I like the violence that comes with it. And Tyler Booker is a violent player. And I want that. And I accept that maybe the testing and maybe the fit's not great. You don't take him in the top 20 as a consequence of that. And if he's not going to go there anyway, there's no reason to take him there. But if he's going in at 47, I think Mel Kiper had him going to Arizona, and they are the 47th pick. If he's going 3 picks in front of you, just give someone a freaking 5th rounder and go and get this MFer. Like, just go and get him and plug him in at left guard, and we can all be happy. Like, I just don't. I know a scheme is important. I get it. But do you need both guards to be able to pull all the time into space and hit someone in open space? I mean, maybe you do. I don't know anything about the zone blocking scheme. But again, I keep pointing to Aaron Banks, who played for the Niners and is playing for the Packers now at a massive contract, which makes me think that maybe this guy can play for Seattle. And I want these tone-setting guys. I want these guys who are going to lift this team. You know, I want to be the Ravens and the old school Steelers from like 15 years ago. And I want a great quarterback. I want great receivers. I want, great skilled players, cornerbacks, whatever. But at the heart of everything, I want the lines that the Ravens and the Steelers had. I want Cam Hayward. I want those kind of people who are just going to hit somebody. And Tyler Booker's going to hit somebody. Next super chat, Nano says, how do you rate Jalen Royals of Utah State? Go Aggies all the way. I like him. I think he's a good player. He's not somebody who gets me thoroughly excited. I have him graded in round 3. And he is my 14th ranked receiver, but that's not negative to him more. It's the players in front of him are just really good. So I think he's going to go in the 3rd round. And not against it, but I think there are other receivers I'd prefer. Noah says, every year there's a shocker, Penix, Turner in 24, for example, and it feels really volatile this year. What do you think will be the biggest surprise this year? I think it'll be probably Will Howard if he goes in the 1st round, like suggested. I think the Milrow potentially going in 1st round would have been surprising if we didn't learn he was going to go into the draft. That would have been surprising, I suppose. Todd McShay mocked that Jackson Dart's going to go 9 to New Orleans and was talking about him going to 7 to the Jets today. I mean, that would put a cat amongst the pigeons, as we say, on this side of the pond. Yeah, I think they're probably the big ones, Adam. I can't think of anybody else that would be a shocker. I mean, unless one of the Browns or the Giants took a quarterback we weren't expecting in the top 5, but that just doesn't seem very likely at this stage. So that's it. I mean, some people might suggest it'll be a shocker if the Seahawks draft 2 offensive linemen in the first 2 days. That might be the big surprise.
Is there something maybe with like a sort of Jihad Campbell or Eamon Warrior, like where they might go? Just sort of people reaching slightly for them as opposed to, or even dropping out. I mean, they seem like the kind of players that they're the sort of buzzy players that everyone is rating, but no one's quite sure how much buzz and where they're going to look on people's draft boards.
I mean, Jihad Campbell, I would have said yeah. But his shoulder injury just, and that's the other thing. Like, I don't understand the info you get, Adam. Like, Mel Kiper's on a podcast going, I'm hearing round 2 for Jihad Campbell now. Yeah, the shoulder, the labrum surgery. Yep. And Field Yates. Yeah, I'm hearing the same round 2. Mel Kiper's final mock draft, 15th overall. What is that? And there's no explanation from that. So I'm there saying that I'm put the guy in round 2 because of you, Mel. Like in my last mock. Where's the consistency here? And if you're going to sort of do that, at least put in the blurb, I'm now hearing that everyone's okay with that. Like, explain this to me. Like, you've got to help us out here. My huddle report scores have not been good the last 2 years. I need to get back on the saddle, Mel. can't give me crap information.
They fear you, Rob. They
They
fear
don't.
you coming in and taking their job, so they're deliberately leading you off the scent. I've seen this before. They fear you.
The good thing is Todd McShay talks about the huddle report scores, and it makes me think, oh, I'm not the only one. And for about years, I was like in the top 20, and I was like, yay. And then what happens is like your good scores eventually come off the board because it's like a 5-year thing. So my better scores come off the board now, and then your ranking just drops. So now I'm like just a complete irrelevance in terms of the huddle report because I've not had a good one in a while. And that's been the last couple of drafts. I've got off to a really good start, and then just nothing for like the rest of the. I can get the people in the first round, but I can't match them up, and you've got to match up like 7 to 10 to sort of get a good score. By the way, this person has said this, and I have to reply to the comments that I just catch my eye. Banks was a very good athlete. Booker is a terrible athlete. I mean, therein speaks someone who has not even been asked to go on Wikipedia and have a look at Aaron Banks' testing profile is almost identical to Tyler Booker's. Aaron Banks is not a very good athlete. He is not. His testing is very similar to Tyler Booker's. So I'm glad we cleared that up. Right. People are quoting the John Schneider show, which is ongoing now. I found it. We gleaned very little information from that show, so I'm not. I don't know if I'll be rushing to go and listen to it after we've done this. You'll probably find out more with us. So, right, the next thing I wanted to talk about. I think we've got my super chat. Oh, we have got 2 more. Sorry. This one says, Will Howard, only 2 things can't be trained: attitude and effort. Question: number of DLOL leaving this draft. I want 3 of 3, 6 total picks to the trenches. I think they will draft 2 defensive linemen, and I think they will draft 2 offensive linemen, maybe 3. That's half the picks. That feels right, actually.
Yeah, I think it'll be 2 offensive linemen and a blocking tight end, or like a tight end that can get involved in the blocking.
I think the tight end's an interesting one, and maybe we'll talk about it in a second, because they did just sign a tight end, which made me think they don't think they're going to get a tight end. Because why would you sign the new tight end now? And his sort of skill set felt like, yep, they've just replaced, what's his name, Pharaoh Brown, with that. And I've long felt that Noah Fant is a draft hedge at this point. He's somebody they brought, when they bring in a player on the cheap they can get rid of, that's kind of what he is. Like, they can move him at any point. So if they know getting a top tight end, they'll move off Noah Fant quite quickly and save some money. But I think
talk about Russell as a fullback.
Yeah, there always is like potential for stuff like that. I don't know what they're going to do at fullback because the college isn't using them anymore. They keep saying they want a fullback, and it's like, well, yeah, but who are you going to get? I always think for that, you're better off just getting a crap running back to do it. Like just an undrafted free agent running back. Just bring 5 in and just give them a chance, like to do it. So yeah, I think 5 in total feels about right. A nose, a Roy Robertson Harris replacement. And they could be high picks, by the way. It wouldn't surprise me if they took Ty Robinson to replace Robertson Harris, and it wouldn't surprise me if they took, say, Alfred Collins or Kenneth Grant to replace Hankins, and they're like 2 of your top 3 picks. It wouldn't surprise me that much. That, yeah, and I think 2 offensive linemen for sure, maybe a 3rd later on. So 5 out of the 10, and then your other 5 could be receiver, cornerback, safety, maybe a tight end, maybe a quarterback, maybe a linebacker. I think that makes sense, actually, because then you've got still got 5 picks, haven't you, to make some sense. Joshua says, really appreciate the super chat, Joshua. It's nice to hear the positive Will Howard reviews from Rob. Call me crazy, but Howard is one of my sleeper picks for Seattle at 18. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that will be whoa if that happens, like 18th. That will certainly get people talking. I don't think 18, but I'd definitely consider him in round 2. And then Tai Tai says, the draft is on my birthday. Here's to hoping the Hawks slay it. Happy birthday for 2 weeks, Tai Tai. I really hope we take a quarterback in this draft at some point. Great work, lads. Thank you, Tai Tai. Keep those coming. We'll might be able to squeeze a few more in. Right. The next thing I wanted to talk about was trading up and trading down, Adam. Something I wrote about today. I wrote down an article about, look, there's an increasing feeling that Tyler Warren might last to 10 and the Bears. And if Tyler Warren lasts to 10, it probably means that Colston Loveland will last to 10 as well. And then you've kind of got 4 picks, Bears to Colts. That's when those 2 players will go. They will go in that window. And if you really want a tight end, if you want the tight end to be like dynamic playmaker, your top target or your second target after Jackson Smith and Jibba, what would it take to get from 18 into the range to get either of those 2 players? And I had a look, and the Steelers moved from 17 to 14 2 drafts ago. And it cost them a 4th round pick. And I was thinking, 18, like 17 to 14, could you go 18 to 14 for a 4th? Or if you like the player badly enough, 18 to 14 for your last 3rd, at 92. Like, look, if you really think Colston Loveland is the next big thing, if you think he's Kittle, for example, or something like that, it's not that much of a sacrifice. You've basically just traded away what you got for Geno Smith, a late 3rd, what is near enough a 4th, to move up a few spots to make sure you get someone you really like. Or it could be Warren. I mean, like, who knows? In this draft, a 3rd round pick might be really, really valuable to teams, especially when you have teams in that draft who don't have as many picks as you do in day 2. And it just made me think, could you move up a bit in that range? And then the other thought I had was, maybe if it's not that, it's trading up from 50. It's that you think, you can either use that pick or future picks or 4th round pick or whatever. You've got 2 5ths to move up a bit and go and get somebody in round 2 that you really want. Not letting the draft come to you, attacking the draft and going, that's the guy we want. We're going to go and get him. Now, that worked for them with Jaron Reed. It worked with them for Tyler Lockett. It worked for them for DK Metcalf. It didn't work with Darrell Taylor. But they have consistently done this, Adam, in round 2, day 2. Lockett was obviously a 3rd rounder. They trade up. They go after guys. And I think it might happen again in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've sort of picked up talking to you about the draft is that, the meat of the draft really is going to start, be that day 2, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round is where you're really going to make your hay. Obviously, the top quality in the 1st round, take that as obvious. But it would, now that I got my head around that, now the thought of taking some of that away to go and get a player at the top of the draft, I find that's thrown me a bit, because that's not the kind of thing that I would have expected you to be talking about. And I guess my worry or wondering for that is that if it's someone like a Warren or a Colston Loveland, like, are they not so well talked about now that the team in that position is just going to stick and pick? I don't know. It doesn't strike me that they're the kind of players and positions, given how much heralded they've been, that another team would let you nick in and take them.
Yeah, potentially. I just think that they've been more aggressive, the Seahawks, than people realize. Like, people don't talk about them moving up, and I think Schneider's made this point. That the list of players that I've just mentioned there, I've just got this feeling that they'll see a shelf. They're going to see a shelf at around pick 40, and they're going to want to be in the top 40 twice. And what I don't think it's out of the question that, and this is the thing. So to go back to McShay's mock, he had the Browns trading from 33 up to 15. And they gave the Falcons the 67th pick and their 2026 second rounder. So next year's second rounder. And the reason that the Browns made that deal was to go and get Shedeur Sanders. Now, McShay's thought process was, how long do you want to wait for Shedeur? Well, when you actually look at it, there's no reason to worry about the Cardinals taking Shedeur. I don't think there is anyway. There's absolutely no fear of the Bengals taking him. So unless they fear the Seahawks, which they shouldn't do, then why not? Maybe they'll wait to 18 to do that deal. Maybe the Seahawks will turn around to them and go, well, just give us a third rounder next year. Instead, it's a better deal for them if you're prepared to wait. And then you end up trading down. And I would be all in on trading down to 33. All in. If you give me the 67th pick and say you have to pick at 33 instead of 18, I'm running to make that deal. Chuck something in next year. I don't care. I'm moving down to 33.
It definitely feels like allowing 32 picks to pass between our first two picks does feel like too long, given the players you've spoken about and how much activity and quality you expect to go in that. So I definitely think trade down to pick up another pick and just close up the gap between the first two picks is slightly more realistic, well, much more realistic to me, I think, than moving up. Because you might end up having a 40 pick difference, or gap between your first and second, which, having just taken a tight end, for example, I wonder if that's too big a gap and too much of the draft can sort of elapse in front of you without you being able to be a participant.
I think the reason I'm really content to move down to 33 is because of the players we've talked about. In McShay's mock, Egbuka's still there, Booker's still there, like Donovan Jackson's still there, Elijah Arroyo's still there, Mason Taylor. So some of the quarterbacks are still like. To me, it just feels like that would be a great deal, because I think the 67th pick has some value. I think if you can get something next year as well, I'm happily moving down to 33. And then what I would do is I move down to 33. You get to spend all night thinking about what you want to do. I think that's a really good thing as well. And then there's another angle to this. If you move down to 33 and then you get a 27, let's say, and you think, we've got to have this guy who's left, we can't risk. You can always move back into round one and it'd be quite cheap to do that, I would imagine, at that point. It is quite cheap to move from like 33 to 28 or something. You could do that. You could actually go and do that to go and get somebody. And then the other thing I would think is, if you let's say they traded down to 33, let's say they do the deal that McShay's pitching here. And there's others, like he pitches Jalen Milroe. The Giants trade up to 24 to get Jalen Milroe and give up 65. So I'd do that as well. Like, you move back a further pick because the Giants pick 34th. So you move back an extra pick, but I would take 65 as well as 67. So I'd do that deal. So it doesn't just have to be, if the Browns trade, if you want to move down to 60, I'd do that exact deal. And why wouldn't the Giants do that with you at 18 rather than 24 if you can get the same deal for it? So that's that. I would happily do that. So they've got 33 or 34. I would then move up and try and get two picks between 33 and 40 rather than having 18 and 50. I think you can get better value there. I think you can get probably the same. The player that you take at 33 will probably have the same grade at the player you take at 18 anyway. So you've kind of got that. But the player that you get at 35 or 36, if you trade up, is going to have a better grade than the player you take at 50. Now, this is all idealistic. People say this every freaking year. I can see them trading down and then trading up with their next pick. Yeah, we say that every year. And how many teams actually do that? None, right? Because it's really hard to do. But if you could, then I think it'd be worth doing. If they can manufacture a way to pick twice in the 30 to 40 range, I think that's better than having 18 and 50. And I'd be all in on that, Adam. Especially if you're going to pick next year as well for trading down. Why not?
I feel a bit like that Zach Galifianakis meme of all of the equations floating past my eyes now. The way in which you described it, I'm pleased you managed to keep up with what you were doing, because you lost me at some point. But I think I'm with you. And yeah, ultimately, as you say, just having, being a part of the bulk of the draft is really what you want to achieve, particularly where there are quite a few positions of need. And sort of a semi-related thing, it might take us on a bit of a tangent, but you were talking to Puck yesterday, and I was listening about teams with their board and whatever, and you were quite forthright about you've got to stay true to the board when we spoke a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just interested because I 100% get that if you're a bad team where you've got so much to do that you stick to your board, you take the best player, that makes perfect sense. If you're a really good team, then you're in a position of huge strength. You have a look at what comes, you take the best player you've got. And I just wonder, like, if you're in a position like Seattle are in, where there are needs and then real needs, I was interested by how much you still think that you 100% stay true to the board as opposed to wavering slightly in order to fill positions. Is there any example or any environment that you would sway from your pure rankings to say, look, we've just got to do this now? I know there's the LJ Collier issue, but they made a bad pick whilst swaying. They didn't have to take that player. But it really got me thinking, because it really resonated with me how forthright you were about sticking to the board a couple of weeks ago. And I've been thinking about it a lot, and I wanted to ask. I know we were talking about a different thing, but yeah, I just wanted to get your view on that, because I can see it if you're good or bad, but if you're indifferent, that strikes me as when you might waver.
Well, I think the moment you would waver is if you had, a player who was the top graded player on your board. Let's say it's a quarterback, for example. Let's say the top graded player on your board is a quarterback, and you're the Bengals, and you have Joe Burrow, and you just paid him. You're not going to draft that guy. Now, that can be translated to other positions. Left tackle, for example, you don't need 2 left tackles, but maybe you need 2 tackles. So you maybe you can put him on the right side. So maybe you would draft that player anyway. So in most instances, no, I wouldn't sway from it. I think it also depends on your positional value. And look, you may well think we've got a good line. Ernest Jones is pretty good, but the top graded player on our board is our middle linebacker. And we're not going to take him because we just don't think the positional value is there, and what we're going to do with Ernest Jones if we draft him and stuff like that. So you do have to sort of grade for your team. And I think you have to manipulate your gradings a little bit to fit, this is a slightly bigger need or a lot bigger need. So therefore, we have to give this player a slight nudge up the board in terms of priority because of that. What you will never, ever do, though, is if you have a player who is a 6, quite easily in this draft, it could be that there's a 6.40 grade on a player and it's on a receiver, and then you have a 6.25 on a guard. You're not going to take the guard in that situation just because you need a guard. Like that would be ridiculous to do that. That would be bad. That would be a bad decision. That would make it a complete mockery of all of the work that you've done over the course of not just the last few weeks, but during a college season, during the last 2 years, 3 years, maybe even dating back to when this player was recruited from high school. You've done so much work on these players. If you're then just going to throw out the grades, then you might as well not have a team of scouts. You might just go, who is the top rated guard on Mel Kiper's board? We will just take him. And that's sort of the way that it has to go. Now, from Seattle's point of view, it's going to be difficult at 18. And there is not going to be a Byron Murphy situation like last year where a player falls and it's just the obvious thing to do to stick and pick and take that player. They are going to take somebody who may well be a great fit for them, and this is why I think Egbuka might end up being the pick, because they'll look at him and go, physically great, character A star or A star, whatever you want to say. But we're not that excited about him. He's somebody that typically we'd take 30th, but in this draft, he's like the 18th best player, and we love everything about him, so we're going to take him. But if you could trade down and then get somebody like that, you'd feel much more comfortable with it. And it's going to come down to who's there. Now, I think there may be 1 or 2 options that they think we're really happy with this. I think Malachi Starks might be one of those, just because I think he's such a classy player and person. Jahdae Barron might be one of those. Egbuka might be. There might be other players that maybe they do think Calvin Banks Jr. is worth that pick, or somebody along those lines. So I do think there are potentials for that. But I think it's best to go in with an open mind. And this is part of the problem with the draft, Adam, because everybody wants you. The number of times you do it and they go, who's your favorite player? Or who do you think they're going to draft? And they want a name. And then you're judged on whether you got that one name right. And it's a complete waste of time, because whoever gets it right is just winning the raffle. That's all it is. There is a handful of players who fit the Seahawks, and they will take one of them. but it could be. There's so many players it could be, and I just look at the options if they trade down. You know, if you gave me Elijah Arroyo at 33 instead, I'm happy with that. Mason Taylor, you know, Tyler Booker, even a Donovan Jackson, Alfred Collins is a lot of people like him. Grant, you know, these players I can understand it. So I like the fact someone's put in the comments that, you know, this is a yeah, and that's what everybody wants all the time. I just don't. I feel like we've fleshed things out a little bit more than that. The final thing I wanted to say, Adam, because we've done an over an hour now, the official visits. I did want to talk about this. So we've got, I think, 11 or 12. I think we've got 12 names now of the 30 official visits Seattle have had, and people wonder, what does this mean? It does mean certain things. It does mean, you know, they have got some degree of interest in these players, you know, or it can just be a smokescreen completely. Sometimes they do that. But I think there's always a reason to sort of want to get a little bit more knowledge on the players. So Nick Emenwari went in for an official visit. Bob McGinn reported this. He's got kind of a quirky personality that is quite contrarian, that if he's buying in what you're selling, then he's great. If he's not buying what you're selling as a coach, he could be a pain in the arse. So that's something that's not really common knowledge with him, but it's out there now. And I think that's why they've got him in. I think they've got him in to try and see if he is fit within their facility. Tyler Shook, just somebody who's kind of emerged from nowhere. And I think it makes sense to get him in and learn a bit more, because they've probably been around Texas and Quinn Ewers and people like that. But we need more on Shook. Savion Williams, again, I think you need to know more about him, because he's so many drops, so many like flashy moments, but so many mistakes as well. What is he? What's his mental makeup like? You know, they've got guys who they might be interested in later on, the Campbell-Dews, the Luntz, you know, who haven't been involved in some of the senior bowls and stuff like that. They're not able to meet them there. Savon Ravel Jr., who's been injured again, wasn't at the Senior Bowl. Mason Taylor, I don't know whether that's just maybe they're thinking of taking him earlier than everybody thinks. Maybe they're thinking of taking him at 18. I don't know, because he's a clean person, very, very polished, bloodlines, everything. It's not obvious why they would meet with him. Michael Williams, again, is another one who loads of questions there. Ty Robertson's in the same boat as Mason Taylor. I don't know why you would meet with him. Jalen Milroe, more info. Jared Wilson, only 1 year starting. Maybe they don't feel like they've got a complete picture on him. Same with Dylan Fairchild. So they're all the players that have come in. I would just urge everybody, do not overreact to this when players don't have a visit, and don't overreact when they do have a visit. But we've got 12 names, Adam. I'm hoping we can get a few more between now and the end of this process. We tend to get about 20 in the end. So it'd be nice to have all of those names.
Yeah, and I'm almost certain that we've had experiences of, you know, the team bringing a guy in for their like second contract. You know, there've been a couple of, I can't remember offhand, but I remember vividly Pete Carroll talking about, you know, we had him in for a visit, knowing that we probably wouldn't get him, you know, in the actual draft, but, you know, just to get some information on for a few years' time, where they picked some guys up. So, yeah, who was I listening to? Someone today, they were saying that, you know, if you're, I think it was Mike Florio was on KJR, and he was saying that there's scouts that will be told if they're out with their mates and there's a player that they don't like, but it comes up in conversation. Oh yeah, pump him up, like what a great player he is. Like, yeah, it's all, yeah, it's such a game at the minute, and it's fun. I guess it's part of the fun, you know, just shifting the cards around and seeing what's legitimate and what's not. But I mean, presumably they're not all going to be smoke screens, all 30 of these visits. There must be at least a couple that they like. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out in the wash, really.
Final thing I want to mention is I am thinking, Adam, for the first time in a long time, of doing a live broadcast during the draft. And I want to know if people want that. So if you could let me know in the comment section of this video whether you would be interested in a live stream during the first round, or even during the second day as well, given Seattle has 4 picks at the moment. If you are interested in that, let me know. Don't do it in the live chat. Do it in the comments after, so I can gauge whether there's interest for this. For 2 reasons. One, I don't want to waste my time and my voice if it's for nothing. And I would be very interested in doing this, but I don't want to do it if people aren't bothered. And I know there's going to be a lot of these live streams on, and you may prefer to go and watch one of the other ones that are going to be happening instead. And that's fine. I won't be offended. If you want to tell me you're going to be watching a different one, that's fine. I just need to know whether it's worthwhile or not. And the reason I say this is in the past, I've enjoyed just watching the draft and just taking it in and then reacting at the end. But I was so frustrated watching the draft last year that I found the analysis to be asinine, and I just didn't like the broadcast. And I thought, I might as well just be streaming right now and doing this. And you guys can react to it, and you can send your super chats in and everything. Then that'd be great. People are saying you could stream with this guy and stream with that guy. That's fine, but the problem is that it can only be on one channel. So I think there's going to be probably a lot of people doing different streams and everything like that. So again, you might not want to be with me on that draft day, but if you do, let me know and I will think about doing something live. I don't know what it will look like completely. I don't know who will be on it, because my word, it's a chore staying up all night to do that, especially if in the UK like we are. But if you are interested in that kind of a show, like I said, let me know in the comment section in this video, or let me know in the comment section on SeahawksDraftBlog.com, and I will make a decision between now and the next 2 weeks as to whether we're going to do it. Anyway, Adam, really appreciate your company again, as always here. It's always massively appreciated, especially when you've been busy watching Spurs and then you've rushed home to come and talk to me.
This was more enjoyable, don't worry. Actually, I had a last question for you, actually.
Go on.
My confidence level with the sort of front office isn't particularly high, and I hope to God that I get a chance to lay down my weapons and prove them so wrong, because they take Gray Zabel and Tyler Booker with the first 2 picks, and I'm rubbing my hands with such glee that I create enough friction to start a small fire. That would be terrific. You always get excited as the draft comes up, but I sense a little glint in your eye that you're very excited by this draft, just from a overall perspective, a Seahawks perspective. I think you've put an awful lot of work into it, and it's sort of kind of falling into place now, and you're sort of enjoying the process and looking forward to it. Do you feel like you're kind of optimistic on a Seahawks side of things, or neutral? Because I get the feeling that you're quite up for it.
Yeah, I'm optimistic, because I think a lot of the things that we talked about, during the season and sort of said this could happen and that could happen, has happened. Because for weeks it was being told they're not, they love Geno and all this, and they're never going to move off to Sam Darnold, and then they go and do it. So you think, well, I'm glad we talked about that now. And I understand that process, and I like that move. There's a lot of people who can't get over it, and I don't mind it. I think I think you've got 2 similar quarterbacks, and you've kind of just gone to the cheaper, younger one and got a draft pick out of it. Like, that makes perfect sense to me. I like that, the way they executed that. I was comfortable with the DK Metcalf trade. I look at their free agency and the players they've signed, and I kind of understand it. And for all of those reasons, I am optimistic, because it makes me think this has been a good offseason so far. And I like what they've done. And it has energized me in a way, because for me, being a Seahawks fan, Adam, and I think you felt this as well, and I think Robbie felt this when we spoke during the season, was that I don't want to just be on this constant treadmill of just, we ain't going anywhere. We're just sort of stuck in this 9 or 10 win place, which is, it's better than being what the Browns were last year, but it's still not very exciting. And just kind of like expecting that we're just one draft away from actually being any good, it had no interest in that. And the first thing I wrote at the end of the year was they need a disruptive offseason. And I think they've had a disruptive offseason. So because they've done what I've asked for, I feel obliged to be optimistic about it. And I am excited. Now, this draft class is not full of stars. This is not going to be a draft class, in my opinion, where the Seahawks come out of it and the franchise has been revolutionized, or that they're going to be on a pathway to the Super Bowl because of everything they've done in this draft. I think that's pretty unlikely. But there are good, solid players who can start in this draft, and you have an opportunity to draft several of them because you have so many picks. And I will always be excited about, as a draft geek, when you have 10 picks in a draft, you can't help but be excited, especially when that's 5 in the top 100. So I like it. I like what they've done so far. I'm excited about the draft. I know what's going to happen, Adam. If they make a pick at 18 that I'm not exactly crazy with, all of the people who've been patting me on the back for the last few weeks going, oh, cheers, Rob, you're really positive at the minute. And I'll just say, oh, it's not that crazy about this pick. And they'll all be back again. You're Mr. Negative. I hate you. You were awful. You're always hammering the team and all this. I was unsubscribed, Rob. I've unsubscribed.
I'll be straight on Reddit slamming you.
Yeah, there'll be a whole thread on there and everything else. And, Rob always hates the team because I've had an opinion that they don't agree with. I'm ready for that. And I am a little bit dreading that first pick, because if it happens and I'm not that crazy about it, I kind of really want them to like that, just so I can come and go, yeah, I like this. And everyone can go, oh, great, Rob likes it. It's fine. We can all just get on with our lives. But even still, I didn't like the Charles Cross pick that much, but I still gave him an A+ for that draft. And I think that could be the case here. I might not like the 18th pick, but they still might be able to get done what I think they need to get done. I feel pretty validated with the Charles Cross thing, because everything I've said about Charles Cross has basically been what Charles Cross is. So, that's where I'm at. So I think that's kind of a long-winded, round the houses answer for you there, Adam. But I am optimistic. I am sort of intrigued, and I am looking forward not only to the draft but to next season with a vinegar that was not on my chips in recent years.
That's not crisps, everyone. That's proper chips before you. Yeah.
Don't call them fries either. Chips.
No. He's gone to Minnesota.
Yeah. It's chips. A bag of chips.
Like good northern boys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although unlike most northern boys, I'm not a big gravy on my chips, man. But
and I'm unlike most Southerners, I'm not a curry sauce on my chips man either.
Neither am I.
Revolting stuff.
I'm a peas man, personally.
Yeah, mushy peas. I'm all for that. Bit of tartar sauce. Happy days.
Yep. Well, we're aligned there. We've crossed the north-south divide and come together, brought the country together in the end of this.
There you go.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, we'll finish while we agree on something as positive as chips. So don't forget to subscribe. Let's get up to 10,000. Let's get it up towards 10,000 before the draft. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Also, like the video, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the live stream in the comment section. Until next time, bye for now.